Hey crafters, it's Taco Mage again, and I'm bringing you another Mekanism version 8 spotlight. Today we're going to handle lasers. Now I know I did actually a decent job of doing lasers in my main spotlight, but I figured I'd go over them again, especially since there's been a few changes. So I'm just going to start at the beginning and go over the recipes. Now a laser is the same recipe as it's always been: 3 reinforced alloys, 2 energy tablets, a steel casing, and a diamond. Now the laser amplifier, its recipe changed. It used to be a tablet in the center, but now it's a basic energy cube. Otherwise it's just the same: steel ingots around the outside and a diamond over here. Laser tractor beam is also the same, which is an electric chest and a laser amplifier. And our laser focus matrix, which is the reactor portion of the lasers, is 4 reactor glass around a block of redstone to get you 2 laser focus matrices. Now lasers by themselves are a pretty simple machine. All they do is they just shoot out a high energy beam that breaks blocks. The blocks themselves just pop into the world and they will either fall to the bottom or just be broken and destroyed by this laser beam. You add a tractor beam on it, and when you turn it on, the broken blocks no longer drop into the world, but are rather collected up here in the tractor beam's inventory, which can then be pulled out using any item conduit or whatever. The amplifier is used to collect and consolidate laser beams. It can be set into a number of modes. You can control the maximum output, the minimum output, and the delay. So if you wanted to pulse it, you could put a delay of 10 ticks, and it will pulse once every 10 ticks. You can also set a minimum output, so that if you wanted, say, a 200,000 RF beam, it will gather energy until it can produce that beam, and then it will just fire off all that energy and begin building it up again. Alternatively, you can lower the maximum setting so that it outputs a beam of exactly the energy you specify. In this case, I put it at 2000 RF, which is actually the energy of one of those lasers. What they'll do with the rest of the energy is store it until you either change the criteria or it fills up. The other thing you can do is give it redstone sensitivity. And there's high and low settings, which are your standard ones. It's also got a pulse setting, which whenever it receives a redstone signal, it will pulse out all the energy and then stop. This is good for with buttons or pressure plates. Now the thing that's new with lasers, and the thing that I'm really excited about, is the change to the amplifiers. And that specific change is that now you can actually draw energy out of that internal buffer. So normally that internal buffer was it would sit there until you fired it off as a beam of energy. Well, now you can actually extract it. It requires a universal cable set to pull energy, which you can do with your configurator set to configure energy. So if we go over here and turn this laser on, you can see it's pulsing out a little bit of energy there. It's actually not pulsing out a full beam of energy because it requires 2000 RF in order to fire, and this basic energy cube can't put out that much energy. But it is going to fire all of that energy into this amplifier, and that amplifier will transfer all this energy into this empty energy cube at full fidelity. That means every single RF of energy that's in this cube will eventually make it over to this one, and I'll come back to that later. What's really neat that you can do with that is that you can actually, with some creative setup, create multiple stops for your beam. So right now I've got a creative energy cube hooked up to a laser. I fire this beam and it goes into this cube. You can see that there's energy being extracted from the cube and put into this energy cube over here. Meanwhile, this amplifier is also firing the laser to this amplifier here, which is also having the energy extracted out. So as you can see, this energy cube is filling up with energy, and so is this one. Now the little trick here is that this is based kind of on creating choke points for your energy. If I were to put a universal energy cable here, it would actually just be sucking out all of the energy from this amplifier as fast as that laser could shoot it, because the ultimate universal cable can just pull so much energy. But by using a basic, it creates a choke point where all the energy doesn't have anywhere to go. So that energy then can be shot further downfield and then collected. And it can also help to change your beam settings. In this case, I've got my beam set at 1K RF, so that's that energy beam going down there, which is then being collected by this guy and stored into the cube. So with a little bit of creative setup, you could have some quite complex energy systems all with lasers. Now there are some issues with doing it that way, but you can't argue with the style. The issues are that if you have a situation where your energy isn't being output as fast as it's coming into the cube, like here, it will slowly build up into the amplifier until the amplifier fills up. And once the amplifier fills up, any additional energy shot into that amplifier is simply wasted. So without some sort of either feedback of energy back towards the source or some sort of descending control, there's no way to stop the whole system or to change the export of the system once one of the nodes fills up. But by the time you're doing this kind of fun, silly setup, you're not really worried about that much power anyway, so it's probably a non-issue for anyone far enough to do this kind of thing. But let's head on to some other things about the lasers. Now, so far as I've been able to find, at least in just Mekanism and vanilla Minecraft, there are only 3 blocks that the laser can't break. One of those is bedrockium. This is your general impervious block. The other thing it won't break is those laser focus matrices. So even if you take them outside of the reactor, they do act as a laser stop, which is good. The other thing that can stop a laser is laser amplifier set to off. In this case, I just set it to high and I'm not providing a redstone signal. So that can act as a way to just stop a laser cold so it's not going anywhere. And as a little bit of a bonus, it will kind of act as a capacitor and store that energy. Interestingly enough, lasers pass perfectly well through any fluid. So as a kind of demonstration, I've got both water and lava, and as you can see, the laser's going through, hitting this amplifier, going through the lava, which you can't see because lava is opaque, but it is making to this amplifier, and then it's just being fired up into the air. So you don't have to worry about liquids blocking your lasers. So what else can you do with lasers? Well, one of the neat things about lasers is that the amplifiers bounce the signal at full fidelity. So I shoot the laser into this amplifier, and it starts gathering up the energy, and then it fires it off to this amplifier, which then takes the beam, and because it's pointed right at it, that's the face, it fires it back to that beam, which then gathers up that energy and fires it back at this beam. So this beam is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger the longer that this laser is pointing into this amplifier, because it's just bouncing the beam back and forth. In fact, I can show that if I turn off this laser here. It actually continues to bounce back and forth, but it's not getting any more power. So if I turn this laser off, or this amplifier off, it will gather all that energy right into it. So there's 1.12 million RF in this amplifier. And I can just fire that amplifier back, and it'll just start bouncing back and forth between these two amplifiers. I turn it off again. You can see it's still 1.12 million RF. So it keeps the beam at whatever level it goes into it, so you don't lose any energy. So eventually I could either extract this energy, or I could always just turn it back on and let it fire again. That's actually pretty neat, and you can do some interesting things with it. For instance, I have this neat little setup right here. You're just a Minecraft player minding his own business, and see 2 walls with some pressure plates in between them. Of course, this couldn't possibly be a trap, could it? So you just walk in, and oh look, you just got lasered. So this actually demonstrates a couple of neat things about the laser beams. The first is that they do not break partial blocks. So redstone signals, string, pressure plates, all those things are perfectly fine having a laser beam pass right over them. The other thing that's interesting here is I have no laser source. What I did is I took this laser amplifier and I charged a little bit into it, so 2.06 million RF, and then hooked it up so that it is set to redstone low. Whenever these pressure plates fire off, this torch goes this torch goes low, which then turns this laser on, and then it fires that laser into this array of lasers, which actually zigzag across this opening. And this top laser right here, see if we can look at it real quick, shoots across to this amplifier right here, which then feeds back into the original amplifier. So I've created a closed circuit of amplifiers, and because doing damage to players or to mobs doesn't cost any energy, I can fire this thing off as many times as I want, and it'll never run out of juice. That's kind of a neat little way to build a trap, or indeed anything that you want to, if you want to just damage mobs or something. So another thing you can do with that is if I've got a door here with a little pressure plate on it, pretty innocuous. You open it up, it's going into somebody's base. Oh, that seems fine. There's a pressure plate on the other side to let anybody out. Come to this one and boom. So the important thing to show there is that a high power laser beam blasts through dirt very, very fast. In fact, it blasts through rock very fast too. And what I've got back here is 3 laser beams pointed to this one amplifier, and it's just sitting back here gathering power. As soon as I hit this second pressure plate, it fires the entirety of that energy downstream past the store. And then I put just a bedrock block right here to stop that beam from going any further and wrecking any of that stuff. But the other thing to notice here is that the laser passes through the open door without harming it. In fact, the redstone signal, because it's a fairly quick signal, it opens the door and shoots the beam pretty much at the same time, and then the door closes and the beam shuts off at the same time. So it's a good way to trap a door, because the door will remain safe from the beam. So that's pretty cool. Now the last thing that I did with lasers, and I went back to using the idea that I can bounce a beam endlessly between amplifiers, is I created this spawning chamber for our friend the Iron Golem. And what I did is I filled the entire bottom of this chamber with hoppers, and then I just put a spawner inside. So if I turn on this laser, it kills everything inside. And what I have is basically the same thing that I did for that first trapped area, is I'm just bouncing a beam all around. And as you can see, that's pulsing a little bit, but it basically keeps that field of death just going and going and going. And I can, of course, turn that off, and it passes all of that energy right back to this amplifier. There's not much energy in it. If I'd charge this up more, it wouldn't pulse as much as it was. But that basically creates a nice little mob spawner. And because I've got all the hoppers down there pointed into each other, all the loot slowly gathers in this chest. So there's a very nice, just native Mekanism and vanilla mob killer. That's all you need. Getting the mob spawner in there might be a little bit of a task, but if you put another mod in that lets you move them, that's all you need. So yeah, that's the laser. And of course, on top of all that, it's what you need to ignite your reactor. But it's a really just fun little machine that you can use to do a bunch of tasks in kind of a new way. It's certainly not the efficient way to do it by any means, because they cost 2,000 RF per tick to fire. But if you're looking to do something with style, I think the laser is your way to go. Thanks for watching. As always, I've been Taco Magic, and I hope you learned something. And if you didn't learn anything, I hope you had a good time. And if neither happened, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Later.